All right, guys. So we're going to do the advanced class today. Our objectives are covering truing. We're going to talk about truing your muzzle velocity, truing your 22 LR, which is a little bit different of a process, and then calibrating your DSF, that drag scale factor, farther out. We'll talk about building out an MV temp table, how to do it, how to apply it, using your range card in the field, building out a target card and using that as well. We are going to touch briefly on the accuracy first page. I actually just got back. The reason I was not doing the beginners class was because I was down with accuracy first, doing some training and some videos. So we'll touch on that when we get down there. We'll talk about max point blank range. And then throughout, we do give a couple little shortcuts. The movers and range and targets are really good shortcuts that I want to make sure you guys know that the Kestrel has. But before we get back into it, it's always good to review the basic part of the buttonology, right? So this is our home screen. Elevation and windage is up on top, and then target, TGT, and wind. Whenever we're asking you to go to our home screen, this is what we're looking for. There's a couple different ways to get back to it, a couple ways to navigate through. Remember that the backlight button is a double tap. If you double tap that backlight button, it's going to take you over into the weather mode. I always keep mine in wind, but you can keep yours in whatever measurement you want to look at, and then double tap, and it'll bring you right back to the ballistics page that you left. That sprocket, the exit menu, that gets you kind of out of jail and takes you into the menu. That center enter button is where you can go down rabbit holes. So anytime something's highlighted like TGT, you hit the center button and that takes you deeper into things. All right. Anytime something's highlighted, that means there is more information behind it. It might be as simple as just defining this stands for target, but it typically will have some more fields back behind it. And right into truing our muzzle velocity. So I always point out this first question, why not just trust my chronograph? And we answered this question before we bought MagnetoSpeed. It didn't get more complicated when we bought MagnetoSpeed, but we do feel the need to clarify a little bit more. We do trust our chronographs. We use chronographs all the time. I have a MagnetoSpeed and I have a Lab Radar, and I use both in different situations. I find that one works better than the other. So, but I do always true my muzzle velocity as well. And I do recognize that my true muzzle velocity might be a different number than what's on my chronograph. So there's a lot of reasons why that happens. A few of them are listed here, the inaccurate BCs. So your BC might be off, which is when it's put together with your muzzle velocity. Your muzzle velocity changing from lot to lot. So you might shoot through your chronograph and then go to a different lot of ammo without even knowing it, and you're going to get different muzzle velocities. And then one of the big ones is inaccurate scope turrets, right? So if they're not tracking, you're not tracking. The main thing to remember with truing is that there's no guessing. With truing, we are using real world performance. So as long as you put all the steps in that we're going to go through in truing your muzzle velocity, then you can trust the data that you get out. And basically, whenever you think about it of, oh, well, my chronograph read this, and when I trued, I got this number. The number that matters to you is the number that got an impact. If your point of aim and point of impact are matching, that's the number that matters. And that's the good thing to kind of ground yourself and go back and say, okay, what did I need to get a hit at that distance, right? And you don't have to guess it. Kestrel's going to give you all that information. When we talk about truing, we go all the way out close to transonic without actually going into transonic. So we want to stay within about 15% of that transonic range, not into the transonic range, but as close as we can to it. It's important to do that so that you can get that whole section of your curve trued out, right? So you're going as far out as you can before you get into transonic. Now we have a lot of East Coasters. We're East Coasters, so we feel the pain of we don't have ranges that my big boy rifle will let me shoot out to transonic. And in that case, you don't necessarily have to go through the truing process at all. If you're only shooting supersonic and you are having impacts at all your distances, you don't have to go through this process. This is to help you as you reach out farther and farther and to refine your curve. Before we true, we have to go through all of the steps of crush. Now, I know we cover crush in the beginner class, but it's important to go through them carefully before you true. And this is, I see Ray's in this class. He's heard me admit my faults many times. But so I, Katie from Kestrel, went to true my muzzle velocity. I expected, I had changed out a barrel. I had a 4-inch barrel growth. So I went from an 18-inch barrel to a 21-inch barrel. And I expected my muzzle velocity to go up 100 feet per second. The rule of thumb is for every inch of a barrel, you get another 25 feet per second in muzzle velocity. I went out, I did all my stuff on my Kestrel, thought, trued it, and it said that my muzzle velocity was slower by 3 feet per second. I was like so mad, and I kept blaming the ammo, and I'm blaming the barrel, and I blamed everything until I finally looked at my Kestrel and realized it was me. I had not updated my environmentals. So I hadn't done the S part of crush. As soon as I did that, my muzzle velocity, my trued muzzle velocity was 97 feet per second faster than my 18-inch barrel, and everything worked out and it was lovely. But making sure you go through these steps of crush, because they are very critical as you go into truing. Always make sure you capture your direction of fire first. Which way are you shooting before you do your wind direction? Because your wind holds are going to be based off of that direction of fire. Make sure that your distance to the target is accurate. And for truing, we really stress that. So you have to make sure that you're not shooting at a berm. When you laze it, you're not hitting a berm that's 10, 15 yards behind that target. Another important part of ranging the distance to your target is making sure that you have a nice, clean target to aim at, right? And that you have a good point of aim. Having a nice, big IPSC target is wonderful. It's freshly painted. There's no spots on it at all. But then that leads to some inaccuracies in the truing process, because you have to make sure for truing that your point of aim and your point of impact are matching. So if you're aiming at a big IPSC and you're aiming at the forehead and you hear a steel ring, you say, yep, I hit it, it's good. But we go down and check out that target, you see that all the impacts are down at the belly button. That's a pretty big difference, that your point of aim and point of impact are not matching. So you need to pull those together to make sure that those are matching up. I really like a truing bar. If you have your own range, you have your own ability to make steel, a truing bar is 1 foot tall by 3 or 4 feet wide. Those wind shifts aren't as important. You're going for elevation shifts when you're truing, right? And it's nice to have a line straight through the center of it. That's my aiming line. I'm aiming for the center point of this truing bar. If you don't have that, and you do have the ability to go up to your steel target, put a little red spot, put some kind of aiming spot onto that target so that you know that's my point of aim right there. We already covered updating your wind direction and wind speed. It is really important to make sure that you have that updated before you go through truing. And then, like I said, go down to environments, turn them onto live, spin them around, and then lock them back down onto lock. And that's going to pull everything in together. Doing all of this means that when the Kestrel gets your trued muzzle velocity, and you then take that information and go off to another state, another place, you won't have to retrue. Your Kestrel's going to say, hey, your barometric pressure changed, and so did your humidity, and all of these things changed. So your hold, even at 1,000 yards, which is where we trued before, is now different. So the Kestrel makes those changes for you. Does that make sense? All right. Another thing to make sure that you do before we true is make sure that you spend some time at your 100-yard, 100-meter zero. Make sure you have a good zero. You can spend more ammo and more time getting a really good position and making sure that your 100 zero is good, rather than spending all the time throwing rounds because you're not properly set up, right? Already said going through crush. And now we're going to get into this truing your muzzle velocity screen. So from the home screen, scroll down till you see your gun, and you're going to hit your center button to go into your gun. MV will be highlighted. Hit the center button to go into MV. Scroll down to Cal MV and center button to go into there. For anybody following along, this is what your screen should look like right now. It's going to give you a number up in the upper right-hand corner in parentheses. And what that number is it's telling you what all the information that you've put in, that's the distance that this round is going to go transonic. So if you remember, I said we don't want to go into transonic. We want to stay 15%, up to 15% short of transonic. So for this 308, 800 yards is the range. So you could either, if you went through the steps of crush, your range is already going to be loaded. If you do it here, you can update your range here as well. But next line down, this drop, based on everything you've told it, the drop is your predictive elevation hold. The Kestrel's telling you in this scenario, you need to hold 6.9 mils. So 6.9 mils, send it. And again, in our scenario, we're saying you missed. It's not quite the right hold. So we had to adjust our hold from 6.9 mils to 6.3 mils. We didn't need as much elevation. We needed to level it out a little bit. Once we made that change in drop, you go down and you change it and say, I'm only holding 6.3 mils. You're going to scroll to the left to bring that number down. Your muzzle velocity will blank out for a second, and then it pops back up with a new number. And in parentheses, it's going to have a plus sign. If you had to increase your hold, it would show you a parentheses with a minus sign. It's telling you your muzzle velocity is slower than you thought. If you have to decrease your hold, that means your muzzle velocity is faster. So it's giving you that another thing to just look at and to be aware of. So I like to do, this says 2 to 3 rounds to determine the actual elevation needed. I think once you get your point of aim and point of impact matching, I would do 3 to 5 confirmation rounds, making sure that you don't have a flyer, you know, especially I don't have time for hand loading. I wish that I did. I also wish that I don't want to do that because I know that it's a trap I can get into, but I do all factory load. So I need to make sure that I'm not making a decision based on having 2 hot rounds go through at the same time, right? So I like to do a bigger group. Once I'm good with it and I'm positive that my point of aim and point of impact are matching, I'm then going to hit that sprocket exit button. And the first thing it's going to do is ask me if I want to add this to my MV temp table. Now, Joe's going to go over everything about MV temp table in a couple of minutes. You can say yes or no. It's not going to hurt anything in the MV temp table. It's not even going to turn on an MV temp table if you don't have it turned on. So it's up to you what you want to do. And after Joe's explanation, you'll have better understanding. The next thing it asks you to do is confirm, do you want to accept this new muzzle velocity? So you hit the center enter button to say yes. And the Kestrel's super proud of you. It says MV calibrated with an exclamation mark, and it's very happy. And then center to get out of that. So now once you have that, I want you to stay in the same lane of fire. So you're still dealing with the same winds. You're still dealing with the same direction of fire. All of that information is the same, but find some targets that are shorter. So 3/4 the distance. So in this example, we would be shooting at 5, 6, and 400 meters, right? Going back and forth between those, or yards, sorry. I was in meters last week. So you can go through those distances and make sure that when you did this, you didn't mess anything up on the inside of that curve. All right, so everybody, does that make sense? Does anybody have any questions about that?
What happens if you're not verified at the lesser distances?
If you're not,
over again?
Yes, yep, go through. It would probably be something like what I messed up. So okay. Go back and think about crush, go through the steps. There is also an MV Cal guide that talks you through everything. I know Joe talked about it in the beginner's class. We have the easy mode. We do have an MV Cal guide. I don't love all of those features, the easy modes and the MV Cal guides, just because I think it limits some of your abilities. But for MV Cal guide, it will, if you are seeing discrepancies, try and go through it with the guide and see if that helps you better it. Everybody good? All right, so 22 LR, super hot rate. Everybody loves it right now. It's the hot thing to do. I swear that I'm talking to AB about doing a 22 LR class, but I make this promise every class, so Ray's laughing at me because he knows. But it is a little bit different of a process. And I talked to somebody else about this before. So the first thing to do is that we do recommend that you use AB custom drag models like we always do. If you have a choice, I would pull in an AB, a CDM. If you don't have a choice of a CDM, this is the one time that we tell you to use a G1 rather than a G7. So if you think about those little bullet pictures, a G1 is kind of rounded at the front and flat at the back. That's more like what our 22 looks like. Instead of that boat tail at the back and the pointier start of some of the bigger rounds, right? So use G1 if you have to, if you can't use an AB custom curve. 0 at 50 yards. So make sure that you have a good zero. Everything that we do through the regular truing process, make sure that your zero is really good. And then you're going to do your MV cal at 200 yards. The Kestrel, when you go into your MV cal, may tell you some differences. This is what we have figured out to be the most accurate, right? So put it at 200 yards and do your MV cal at 200 yards. Then confirm it, just like we do on the big guns, 75 and 100 yards. Come back into those shorter distances and everything should be matching up. Now, as you start to reach out beyond 200 yards, if you're doing a comp or you're doing, or whatever you're doing, and you're starting to reach out beyond 200 yards, if you start to see inaccuracies that you have to make adjustments that aren't wind related, because wind is going to push this guy around, especially at that distance, then you're going to go into the DSF steps and you'd follow the exact same steps as what we're going to go through for DSF next. But if you continue to have impacts and you're good, you don't have to do DSF. All right, so the only real difference is that whatever it tells you up in that upper right-hand corner when you go into MV cal for a 22 LR, ignore it, use 200 yards. All right, DSF, this is drag scale factor or drop scale factor. It depends on who you talk to at what time of the day. But drag scale, drop scale factor is for going transonic and subsonic. So again, it is looking at that whole curve and it's just tweaking that curve, bending it to match what you actually have coming out of your weapon system for any variety of issues, right? How fouled is your barrel? There's so many different things that could make your trend follow a little bit differently. You've already put your spot here at the zero range. You've already put a spot here where you calibrated your muzzle velocity. And now you're shooting out farther and farther, and you're starting to see some inaccuracies where you have to change your elevation hold. This is where the one disclaimer, like a lot of our calibers now, it's easy day to a mile, right? If you get a spot where you get an opportunity to shoot a mile and you're hitting steel at a mile, don't go through Cal DSF. This is a tool for I'm missing and I have to make adjustments. This is not a tool to take up your time when you get to shoot steel really far away and you have impacts. Celebrate your impacts. And if you're dancing around that target because of wind, that's still not the need for a DSF calibration. So if your elevation is on, you don't have to do DSF. Celebrate and brag about the distances that you are shooting and enjoy it. To get into DSF, we're going to do all the steps of crush, everything we did for Cal MV. Now, if you do these back to back, I still go through the steps of doing crush. I still think that grounding yourself and going back to those steps is really critical. Wind is very important on Cal DSF. If you think about these targets, if you think about these ranges, they're really far away, right? We're getting, especially depending on what caliber you guys are shooting, it's out there. So everything matters. The farther we shoot, the more that things matter, right? To get into our Cal DSF, you're going to go into gun. So from your home screen, scroll down to your gun, just like you did to get into Cal MV. You're not clicking on MV. You scroll down in your gun profile till you see Cal DSF. It's pretty close to the bottom. Right underneath it is delete gun. Make sure that is not where you are. Don't do that. All right, and you click onto Cal DSF. Now, Cal DSF is going to give you a screen that looks very similar to what we just saw in our Cal MV. So it still has a number in that upper right-hand corner. It has your range, your drop, and then a DSF number. That number in the upper right-hand corner, though, is now when the bullet has slowed to 0.9 Mach. So it is telling you numbers from here and beyond are what we want you to look at. So on Cal MV, you're going short of the number. On Cal DSF, you're going past the number. The other big change is Cal DSF is a table. It's not a single point. Truing our muzzle velocity is 1 point. On Cal DSF, we're building out a table. So we're almost going back to, I say old school. It's not old school. I mean, a lot of people still do it, but building out your dope card, right? So you go and you start on the 100-yard berm and you shoot and you write down your notes. And you do 200 and you shoot and you write it down, 300. It's kind of what we're doing with Cal DSF, where as we reach out farther, we're saying, okay, I had to adjust my hold here and I put that drop in. I had to adjust my hold here. And as you go farther and farther, It's really important to know, though, with Cal DSF, that it is in a straight line. You can't go 1,700 yards and then make adjustment at 1,300 yards. It has to be near to far. So you go 13, 17, 22, right? So you reach out near to far. If you do something that is closer, it's going to erase your longer distance out of your DSF table. Now, these, like I said, these are really far ranges. So same rules apply for looking at that target, matching point of aim, point of impact. It's a lot harder to spot these targets, a lot harder to spot the impacts. Having a hit indicator on a giant, a 22-inch piece of steel isn't necessarily going to tell you if that flasher goes off, yep, I got an impact, but you don't know that your point of aim matches. So you do have to be careful about the data that you put into here. You certainly don't want some spray to go up and to hit that target, hit off the light, and you say, yep, that was an impact, and let me adjust it, because that will hurt you later. So make sure that you are, it's Cal DSF. I don't know that I've ever done by myself. I don't like to spot that by myself. Make sure you have a good spotter, and make sure you really can see where those impacts are going.
I have a quick question.
Yeah, please.
Okay, if I'm at a range and the maximum distance of the target is going to be 3,700 yards. So I've done a muzzle velocity cal. Mm-hmm. And then when I look at my DSF, I can add that on top of, as long as the distance that I'm adding is further than the distance that I did my muzzle velocity cal.
Yes, the critical part is that it has to be farther than the distance in the upper right-hand corner, which will be farther than the distance in your MB cal.
Not farther than the range, but farther than the cal.
Than MB cal, yes. So MB cal is at a shorter range, because this number in the upper right-hand corner is where it's slowing down to 0.9 Mach. That is going into transonic, so that's going to be past that 15% threshold that we already used.
Right.
You did your cal, you did an MB cal in supersonic, which has to be a shorter distance than what a 0.9 Mach speed is going to give you.
Okay, I got it.
Does that make sense? Does anybody have any other questions? Once you go through and you're going to adjust your drop to say what your actual hold was, it's going to give you this DSF number, and then it builds it into the table. You can also go into, then you accept it. It's not going to ask you to add this to an MB temp table. This is not the same thing as doing MB temp. And it'll be proud of you again, exclamation marks, all those things. But it puts it into that table. You can then, once you have a table built in your gun profile, you can go down and see your table and see how many different parameters you have in that table. I will say, if you go back out and you're shooting at a long range and you know you've gone through crush, you know you've updated everything, you know that your barrel doesn't have 3,000 more rounds on it, so maybe it's sped up because of that, I have to do muzzle velocity. All of those things are gone, and you're still seeing really big adjustments from what your Kestrel's giving you. My first step is always to delete my DSF table, because typically there's something wrong over there. DSF is adjusting BC. It doesn't adjust the BC number that you see in your gun profile, but it makes tweaks at your BC at those longer ranges. You guys good? Okay. MB temp table. Joe, this is you.
All right, MB temp table. So as Katie mentioned, when you true your muzzle velocity, it'll be at a known temperature. So we can actually add that to what we call our MB temp table. The MB temp table is going to be just a finer tuning of what we know, and having that in the Kestrel makes it even more accurate. So first things first is, how do we access the MV temp table? Well, from the main ballistic screen, we're going to highlight gun, go down to gun, hit the center button, and go to MV, hit the center button, and it's going to be below the cal MV that Katie had just talked about. So it's called MV-temp. And typically it's going to default to off. If it's off, it's not using the table, even if there's values in the table. If it's on, it's always going to be using the table. So one of the first things, how do you enter a point? Well, if you're not doing it with the cal MV and automatically entering it, we can highlight MV temp, hit the center button, and you'll see something called new entry. Hit the center button. And here's where we could use the right and left arrows to change the temperature and change the muzzle velocity. So right now I'm just putting in the example 66,2783 feet per second. And when I'm done, I exit out. And then when I exit out, you'll see is now a new point on the table. We could add up to 6 points. Next slide. So we really don't want to use the MV temp table with just one point in there, because all the Kestrel knows is that singular point, and it's going to try and extrapolate that across the entire temperature range, and it's not going to know what the slope is. So really, we want to do 3 kind of spread out points as we see here, maybe not as spread out as these, but you want to have at least some good information that the Kestrel can say, oh, okay, I can figure out the slope, and now I know what the temperature is across the entire range. Now, I know a lot of people live in Florida or Texas, and they don't get cold too often. They're always shooting in the heat. So we have another option, which is called the slope tool. And that is going to be in the MV temp table menu. When you go down under new entry, there's something called MV temp slope. Now, the tricky part about this is you need to know how your powder changes over temperature. So that isn't always easy to find. But if you do know that, this is a nice, quick, and easy way where we can set up an MV temp table just based on one point. So you would go into your slope and say, you know that it's 1.5 feet per second per degree Fahrenheit. I'm going to put that in, and then I'm going to hit calculate, go. Now, bear in mind, when you go back to the MV temp table, the middle point is the 66 that you see in yellow. That's going to be what your current ambient temperature is that the Kestrel's measuring. So you want to make sure that at the temperature that you're at currently, you know what that MV is, because that's going to go as your center point. And then you're going to get a -50 and a 140. So you'll get the entire range based on that slope. Now, this may not be as accurate because it's based on the accuracy of the powder temperature slope, but it's better than nothing, and it's viable for people who can't get different temperatures. Jerome, we get this from the chronograph value. So again, if you get in your chronograph value and you're hitting the target, you know, where you want to, yes, you could use the chronograph value. If you need to do the cal MV, then use the cal MV value. So you want to use whatever value is making you hit the target, I guess is the answer, I would say.
I have a question, Ray.
Yeah.
I was in the Fordoff class last week. Is there any way to export their powder multiplication factor out of Fordoff to be able to use it for this?
Yeah, I remember you asking Jaden that. He was saying that there's really no relation. I don't know. I don't know the background on how they're getting that value. We could maybe look into it. But according to Jaden, he was saying there's no like one-to-one comparison between AB and Fordoff values for the value they have. But if we knew what formula they're using to compute it, I guess we could try and, reverse engineer how to use their values in this tool.
Yeah, the quick example I saw, I mean, it showed multiple powders, and then it gave like this powder is a 1.5, and then this one was like a 0.9. And if you know, I guess the temperature to multiplication or division factor, you could kind of build a rough slope, I guess.
Yeah. Like I said, I don't know enough on how they get that value. That's the problem where I can give you a direct answer, but and we might be able to look into that afterwards and see if there's something we can do. So Katie, I guess Ford Off already has like powder temperatures in our bullet library,
Yeah,
but it's like a number that doesn't really relate to this.
Ford Up does that is definitely one spot where it's really good. How they handle that and what they do with that. I don't know how that could pull into applied ballistics, and I'm pretty sure both companies would be like, no. So it would have to be a workaround that neither one of them were involved in. But I do hear that often, that they do have a good handle on all of that.
Thank you.
Next slide, Katie. All right, so some things we need to remember. So once you turn the MV temp table on, it's going to control your muzzle velocity. So when you go into the MV on your gun, it's going to be underlined, and you won't be able to adjust it. So will be the reason if you want to adjust your MV, turn the MV temp table off again. And don't use the MV temp table unless you have kind of 3 spread out points. It'll be worse for you than if you didn't use it. Make sure low, middle, and a high temperature. Now, the other thing some people will do is they will freeze or heat their ammo to get different chamber temperatures. Now, if you're able to measure the chamber temperature, we could use that value for the MV temp table as well. One little caveat is, in order to pick up both your chamber temperature and the environmental temperature, there's a little kind of trick you want to do. So you want to turn on your MV temp table, go down to environment, lock it, and change your temperature to what your chamber temperature is. So if it's 110 degrees in the chamber, make it 110 degrees. And that'll change your muzzle velocity to match what that chamber temperature is. And then go back and turn off MV temp table and turn environment live. So now you'll have your MV at the chamber temp, but then you'll capture the environment as well at the right temp, and then lock it and then take your shot. So that's how you can kind of do both, but by setting the chamber temp as your environment temp, and then turning off the table and then going back to live to get the environmental temp. Any other questions on this?
Yeah. What you said makes sense. In real world, what environment are you shooting in that you have that much time? I've not experienced that, where you can do all of those steps.
I mean, that would be if you're just out on a range practicing, I would say. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, this is more like a load development, making sure that you build it all out. And this is more for the hand loaders. I would never use the MV temp table because I do a factory load and they're pretty consistent with their slope.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that my brain was kind of tracking. Okay.
Yeah, and to be honest, more and more, especially now that we have limited supplies, but more and more powders that people are using are not as temperature sensitive as they used to be. So this is really, really for a temperature sensitive powder that has some pretty big spikes in it.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question about that. So can we trust that depending on, I know that they would say that this is the variation in 1 degree Fahrenheit, but what if, for example, the bullet case or whatever container you're using has been exposed to the heat and now it's hotter than the external temperature because it's in a box, let's just say. So is it safe to say that I can't really trust that? I don't really want to trust that.
So that is always the problem, right? If you're shooting in sunlight and you have your ammo sitting next to it in an ammo can, it's going to get heated up. That is unavoidable. And that is not the true temperature that your Kestrel's measuring when you swing it around. But being aware of that and making sure that you keep them shaded or anything like that. Again, the Kestrel is, if you're shooting throughout the day, you keep your ammo pretty close to you. You're feeling like the ammo is pretty close to the temperature around. The Kestrel is going to make those changes a regular temperature change for your holds. It doesn't need the MB temp table to do that. The MB temp table is for those extreme jumps, the powders that are a little more volatile. But what you just asked is absolutely a problem. If you pick up some rounds to shoot them and you realize that they're pretty hot, I would cool them down a little bit before you throw them in the barrel.
Yeah, I was having the same problem, and it was quite difficult to understand what's happening. So I went a step further. It doesn't matter till I think, in my experience, 600 meters or 800 meters won't make that amount of difference. I have a good experience with Vetovoris and Alliant modern Hodgins. But then I started taking ammo temperature with the infrared thermometer, and the things were really showing up, and I used to feed that my Kestrel.
Yeah, how were you getting the ammo temperature? Did you have like a laser?
Yes, I have a laser thermometer, and I would just do once, and I would get the true ammo temperature. It's quite scary how much difference can you get, because once your box or even a cardboard box is lying on the range, because we don't have shades over there, you can have a variation of 10 to 15 degrees, which will give you a muzzle velocity change of 15 to 20 FPS at times.
Yep. Does anybody have any other questions about the MB temp table? Okay. By the way, while Joe was doing that, I sent out the basic class. So everybody that was waiting for the basic class, that email just went out. So you should have all of that. Range card. So we finally are where we can shoot and not have to deal with all this other administrative stuff on our Kestrel. So there's a couple of different places where you can get your elevation holds, get the data that you need to do all of your shooting. I primarily like to live in the range card. I love the range card. It gives me everything that I need to know. The range card is pretty versatile. The only fallback on the range card is that it's a single lane of fire. So it's saying I'm shooting in this direction, right? And that the wind is coming from that same direction, or from the direction I sat. But if you guys scroll down below gun, you're going to see range card, and you hit the center button to go into range card. Right when you get into range card, you can hit the center button one more time, and it's going to open up a screen and ask you if you want to change your increments anywhere from 10, 20, 25, 50, and 100 yards or meters, whatever distance you're in. Joe, is the 5 coming in soon? Is that on our next round?
I don't know. I have to check. I think it might be.
I think it is too. So for our 22 LR guys, we recognize that even 10-yard increments is a big jump for a 22 LR. So we have a 5-yard increment that will be coming in as well. It's just more to scroll through, but for 22 LR, that's pretty critical. So I put mine in 100-yard increments. The next line down, you can either check if you want to do it by line or by page. This was a change that was given to us by one of our users, one of our very active users. He got sick of kind of scrolling through, 500 he'd push down, and then 500 would go away, 900 would show up, everything would close off, and then it would reopen with his holds. If you do it by page, that whole page will flip, and 900 will be the shortest distance. It's much faster to get your different distances doing it by page. Then if you pop back out of that, hit the sprocket button one time, you'll be on this screen like what I have right here, range, elevation, and wind. So you can see that range, you can change that by scrolling up or down to increase or decrease your range. Your elevation is always going to be telling you what your number one elevation is. And then we get into this third line, which you can flip through things. The first one is your wind 1. Wind 1 is your primary wind. It's your moving average. It's not your max gust, it's your moving average. And it also is what applies AJ to your elevation hold. If you scroll to the right, you're going to get wind 2. Wind 2, it comes off of, if you do an automatic update, wind 2 is your max gust. So that's your hold if you have to engage in the mover or engage in a maximum gust, right? The next one over is lead. So when you scroll over, you're going to see your lead. Now, lead is telling you what to hold in front of a mover so that you can hit a mover. It doesn't tell you what the speed of the mover is. It doesn't tell you anything else in the range card. So we have to go into our target screen to do that. So I'm going to have everybody hit the sprocket to back out of range card. And you're going to scroll up until TGT, our main home screen, is highlighted. When TGT is highlighted, hit the center button for TGT. Scroll down to TS, that's for target speed, and center button into there. And then scroll down to speed estimate and hit the center button to go into there. This unlocks this whole ability for the Kestrel to help you figure out how fast a mover is moving. Now, this whole calculation is for movers that are compliantly walking or moving in one straight direction, left to right or right to left, right? So if the mover is kind of trotting away from you or going zigzag, it's not the best tool, but it will give you a better idea of what that speed is. The first thing you have to do is input how far away that mover is. So however you want to get that distance, you input your range. The next thing is movement. Now, when we say movement, it is how long do you want to measure that movement? When you look through your reticle, how many mill lines or how many dots do you want to watch while that thing is moving through your field of view? I will say shorter distances, I'm a very impatient person. I don't like to wait around, but I have learned that I have to wait more than 3 or 4 mils because of reaction times, right? So 6 mils is one of our recommended distances. That is a good distance. I know guys that their spotting scope has 18 mils. So they've just put in 18 mils, and I don't know what they do while they were waiting for 18 mils, which seems so long. But the good part is that what we're asking you for, so when you're looking through your reticle and this mover crosses the first plane, you're going to start counting. And then when it crosses that last plane, you stop counting. And that is then telling you how fast that mover's going. It doesn't expect you to count in your head and be perfect with it. The Kestrel has a stopwatch. So if you scroll down the time and hit the center button, it'll open up your stopwatch. So you've already set your movement to say 6 mils. You're now looking through your reticle. The mover crosses that first plane. You hit the center button to start. It's going. It's crossed the 5th, and here it comes across the 6th, and you hit the center button to stop. It's then going to give you...
Can you repeat how to get to this one?
Yes. From your home screen, TGT is highlighted. That's all the way at the top of your list of your Kestrel. Hit center button to get into TGT, and then scroll down to TS, target speed. And then center button into TS, and scroll down to target speed estimate, and center button into that.
Thank you.
Yep. So it's telling you now, if you've gone through all these steps and you've watched this mover and you've confirmed it, it's now telling you how fast the mover is. Really, this is super useful for competitive shooters. You get to a stage, the RO says, hey, we got a mover here. He's reading off of his little matchbook that the match director gave him, because the match director timed this mover 2 days ago, and the match director said it is moving at 3 miles an hour. The thing is that there is most likely 7 other squads of 10 guys each that already shot the shit out of that mover. It is not moving at the same speed that the match director, most likely is not moving at the same speed the match director measured it at. So always take the time to measure it out. And this tool gives you a quick and accurate speed. But it won't actually tell you what your hold is. It's just going to tell you when you go through these steps, it's going to say, yeah, it's moving at 2.2 miles an hour. Good job. It doesn't tell you what your hold has to be. So that's where we go back into this range card, and lead is now telling you what your hold is. You can then, if you move back, if you're, that same target strolling now, and now it's strolled down another 100 yards, and now it's moving left to right 100 yards farther away, the range card will tell you how fast that mover or what your hold is at 600 yards instead of 500 yards. It keeps going. Now it's 700 yards. Great. Here's what your lead is at that distance. What it doesn't do is add the wind. So it doesn't add or subtract the wind. The Kestrel does not care, nor does it know if the mover is going left to right or right to left. So it's not going to input a left to right wind or a right to left wind, right? This is the one time that I dial wind. If I'm doing a mover in a competition, I will pry off that windage turret because it's really, that knob is really caked on there because I never touch it. I'm gonna pry it off and I'm gonna dial my wind. That way, whichever way the mover's going, all I have to worry about is what my lead is. I don't have to worry about, I'm going to hold 1 mil in front, 1 mil in front, 1 mil in front. I don't have to subtract or add my wind. I don't like math at all. I'm really, really bad at math. Like my 13-year-old, I can't help him in math. I can't even help my 8-year-old in math. The Kestrel means that I don't have to do math. So I dial my wind for that. Whatever direction that mover goes, it's going to give me that. And then just remember to take that wind dial off. So that's lead. The next one over is trace. It is telling you where to look over your aim point to see the vapor trail. So if you're shooting or you're spotting for somebody and you can't see their trace, this is a really good starting point for where to look. It's basically giving you max ord. It's telling you, here's the apex and this is where you're going to be looking. And then you see that trace and then you can't unsee trace, right? So on a nice sunny, beautiful day, you're going to start to see the trace. You probably won't use this tool after you start to get used to seeing trace, but each different round, you know, or cloudy days, you're going to use that tool. Next one over is remaining velocity. So REMV has another little Easter egg hidden in it. If you guys scroll your distances down, so increase your distances, you're going to see a small dot show up next to REMV. And then if you continue to increase your distances, you're going to see a bigger dot. That small dot is telling you that your round has just gone transonic. The bigger dot is telling you that now we're in subsonic. So again, the knowledge that you get from using this range card, that gives you that knowledge. Okay, yep, if things are getting a little wonky, I probably need to work on my DSF table. I'm having more misses. That's because I'm well into subsonic and I got to work on my DSF table. Remaining energy is critical for many different reasons, but hunting is a really good reason to make sure that you know the remaining energy at the distance you're shooting. Time of flight for all the ELR shooters, that's so cool. Saying like, okay, I'm gonna wait 9 seconds till my impact hits. So that will give you an idea of what your time of flight is. And then spin drift and horizontal Coriolis are both displayed there, even if you have them turned off so that they're not applied to your elevation hold. So that is all on range card. Now target card, oh, there's our target speed estimator. So target card used to be a basic 10 targets. You had 10 targets. And the cool thing about a target card is that you could do them in different directions of fire. So you could do a target that way, a target here, and another target back over here, and name them all out. And that was pretty helpful to have 10 targets at a time, single targets. What we increased is that we actually felt like we needed to have the ability to do more sectors. So we renamed our target cards to saying that they had sectors, and we now have 30 sectors of 10 targets. So it's 300 custom targets that you can set up. And I just remembered that this is Joe's part that Joe always talks about. I'm going on mute.
You can do it. I don't care. So yeah, now you could do up to 30 different sets of 10 targets and appropriately name each one so you know which one's which. So the first thing is, of course, how do we get to it? On the main ballistic screen, we're going to go down and keep going down until you get the target card and hit the center button. The first screen that shows, it's going to look identical to what the target card used to show. It's just your first sector and your whatever the default values are in there. Hit the center button again. And now here's where you'll see the SCTR at the top for sector, and then next to it's going to be the name of the sector. Each name is going to have a preceding digit just to keep them in order. You can't change that. So the first one's 1, second one's 2, 3, etc. But if we want to build a new sector, we're going to highlight sector and hit the right button until you see new sector. And once you have new sector, hit the center button. Next slide. Here's where we can name the sector. So two little helpful hints here. If you want to delete a letter, it's a pain in the butt to go all the way around up and down until you get to the blank. So just hit the red button. That'll delete the letter. If you want to add a space, hit the backlight button. That'll add a space. So that's a little bit easier with having to name it on the Kestrel with the limited availability of scrolling through the letters. All right, so when you back out now, you'll have your new 2 with the name of the new sector. So the first thing we need to do is set our target input. So we're going to hit the center down button, then center button on target inputs. Next slide. Now, if all your targets are going to be facing the same direction, we could do an all target direction of fire capture. So we would highlight all target direction of fire capture, point the Kestrel at the targets, and hit the center button to capture it here. And then that will apply that DOF for our targets A through J, whatever you captured. Next slide. Now, if the targets are in different directions and we can't do an all target capture, well, here's where we go and we would highlight target A. Now we could do a couple things here. We could use the red button on target A to capture the direction of fire and then use the right and left button to change the range. Or we could, if we're connected to a compatible laser rangefinder that does DOF, we could just highlight A, laze the target. It's going to pop in your direction of fire and your range. So then you highlight B, laze, highlight C, laze. That's probably the easiest way to do it. Otherwise, you would highlight A, do your capture, highlight B, do your capture, highlight C, do your capture, and that's how you could go through the line and get each target's direction of fire. Now, if you need to set...
If I'm on the screen, this is Jerome. If I'm on the screen and then, for example, I hit my laze on my rangefinder, which is normally paired to my Kestrel, will it enter it in here?
Yeah. If you're paired and you highlight A and just have row A highlighted, it'll capture for A. Then highlight B, and so forth. Yep.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, and that'll also a lot of times get you the inclination angle, which is here. It's a little hidden though. So if you need to set your inclination angle or target speed, you hit the center button. Here's where we could do the range, direction of fire, I degree, which is your inclination angle or your target speed. And you'd have to do that for each one as well. Next slide. So once you have all your direction of fire and your range set, now we need to determine what the wind's doing. So we would go back out and we would highlight wind inputs, hit the center button. Now, a lot of times the wind's going to be the same across all the targets. So we could do it again, we could do an all target wind capture. So highlight all target wind capture and note that as soon as you hit the center button, it's going to start doing a capture. So when you're doing this, hold it into the prevailing wind, hit the center button, give it about 5 seconds or so, and then hit end capture. And once you hit end capture, you'll see on that screen. Well, no, so it shows you end capture. Then you hit the center button. Next slide. And once you do the end capture, again, when you do the end capture, make sure you're pointing that direction because it's also going to pull the wind direction at that point too. Then you'll get this screen on the left that shows continue, go. Now, if you were happy with the capture, just hit continue, go, and it'll apply it to all the targets. Otherwise, if you want to either change something or initially you just want to manually enter what your values are, you still have to go through the capture to manually do it across all, but here's where we can go and change it. So we could go in and change any of the wind direction, wind speed 1, wind speed 2. And then when you're happy, hit continue, go. And then those values will get populated across all the targets in that sector.
I have a question.
Next slide. Yep.
When you're using capture all, is there a
Mhm.
rule of thumb as to how far apart the targets or how close the targets need to be in order to use that feature?
I don't have a rule of thumb per se. Katie, do you have any guidance on that?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
Is there a rule of
When you
thumb?
do,
Go ahead.
okay, yeah, when you're doing an all wind capture for all 10 targets, is there a rule of thumb on how close the targets need to be for that, for you to use that?
No, you're getting into the more complicated wind questions, right? So where does the wind apply? Where does it matter most? If you're capturing it right at your hand, or you want to capture it farther down range for those
Or
long.
DOF, either one.
I mean, DOF is going to be direction of fire is going to be direction of fire. So that's always an easy one. Your wind direction, you can get the value of your wind direction pretty easily from where you stand, even if it's just visual, that you see down in this valley, all the wind's going this way, even though right where you're standing, it might not feel that way. You can put that in. But applying that wind speed and the wind speed hold at the longer distances is where we have a whole wind class that takes 2 hours. I still think the wind that you can control and you can measure is the closest to you. So that is the wind that you know and you can apply. And that's what I did.
Okay.
It's a super unhelpful answer to a very complicated question.
No.
Sorry, you wanted next screen, Rachel?
Yeah. So then now if you want to do a capture for all different targets, not doing them all at once, we would go through the same steps that we talked about with the range, with the direction of fire, I should say. So yeah, we could highlight A, we could use the red button pointing the prevailing wind, red button to start, red button to stop, and then highlight B, red button to start, red button to stop. And then if you could always also just hit the center button instead of doing a capture and just going in and setting your wind direction, your wind speed 1 and wind speed 2 manually for each target. So once you have your wind and direction of fire all set for every target, we're going to back out one more screen from the target input screen. And then here is where you're going to see your list of holds. Now, this is going to be set up very similar to how a range card is. So we can scroll through win 1, win 2, and through all the different values that are in there, that we talked about, the lead, the trace, the remaining velocity, etc. And then the other thing is we can create these target cards with the app, which we kind of showed you a little bit in the beginner class, and transfer them to the Kestrel or pull these values into the app from the Kestrel. And with the latest Android release, you can build up to 30 sectors in the app and send them one at a time to the Kestrel. We're still close on iOS, and probably another week or so before you guys get the features. We're still testing some stuff out. But that should help as well. Are any questions on sectors?
Yeah, I have one.
Yep.
Okay, so if we're shooting like a 70-degree course of fire, right? And I'm going to use like west would be like where we're going to start. And then we're going to pan all the way to the east, right? So we're going to use north is going to be 0, like on our direction of fire, like for our compass calc, correct, right?
Yep.
So then when we capture our wind, so say the wind is coming out of the northwest, and when you capture that for all your targets, so I had an instance where it didn't apply. I don't know if I was capturing it wrong or not inputting my wind direction correctly.
So there's something called so if you highlight target from the main screen, TGT, hit the center button, then highlight target, highlight wind, highlight wind from the main screen. Even I can't find stuff sometimes. And then highlight wind direction, WD.
Yep.
There's something on here called wind direction change. Manual means that you have to do, for every direction of fire, you have to do a wind capture to get the right wind direction. Now, if you change that to with DOF, that means if you change your DOF, the wind is going to change respectively with it. That might be what you need to set, I think.
So you want DOF on?
Yeah. So then when you do your wind capture, it's going to be based on the DOF overall, not per each target.
So then you want your wind in clock or degrees?
That's basically up to you.
Personal preference.
Yeah. So then wind direction's based off where, like, so 12 o'clock is where it's coming from, or that's where it's going. You know what I don't know if I'm saying that right.
So your DOF is 12 o'clock, but you're saying your wind is like 11 or 10 o'clock?
9 or like
Or
10:30,
9 o'clock?
right?
Yeah.
So the way to think about it is the Kestrel's built that you're always looking through the screen, either looking through the screen at the target or you're looking through the screen at the wind blowing into your face.
That's right. So I guess my question is, so when I cal compass north, like true north is 0, right? Is that the basis that Kestrel's working in? But then we were shooting into the south, but then it was like it wanted me to put in wind out of like 6 instead of out of 12, even though that was my direction of fire.
So DOF is always going to be absolute. Wind direction is going to be relative to direction of fire. So if you are shooting at 3 o'clock and the wind is coming from 9 o'clock, it's not going to show as 9 o'clock for wind direction. It's going to show as 6 o'clock because it's actually a tailwind, if that makes sense.
No, that does make sense, yeah.
So yeah, if your direction of fire is 0, then your wind direction is just going to be your wind direction. But if your direction of fire is anything but 0, the wind direction is going to be based off the direction of fire.
But that is also predicated by crush, making sure that you do get your direction of fire for every single target, so that when you do capture it, it adjusts based on the DOF.
Yeah, correct.
No, I think I got it perfect. Thanks.
You got it? Okay, cool. What's next, Katie?
Oh, I don't know. It is. Oh, you have another page.
Oh yeah, I always forget this page. So yeah, the last thing is kind of straightforward, but if you ever want to rename or delete the sector, you would highlight the sector, hit the center button, and then, you could scroll between them by using the right or left arrow. But if you hit the center button, you can go in, you have rename or delete the sector, and that's how you could do that. All right, now you can next slide.
Okay.
Was it accuracy first? Yeah.
Accuracy first, yeah. Does anybody have any other questions about the target cards and all the sectors? It's a really cool feature at expanding out all these target cards. It definitely makes the HUD much more relevant as well, because now you can throw all of these different target cards on the HUD and be able to scroll through. But if anybody has any other questions, just let us know. All right. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, one question. I haven't been very familiar with the Kestrel app. How much features or menus which you have on Kestrel can be programmed from the app, and what is the full functionality expected to be enabled, and different menus, is everything enabled in the app as well?
That's you, Joe. You know I don't like the app.
I didn't quite understand the question. You were asking about the sectors in the app?
No, I'm asking about the full functionality of the app, because for me it's a bit difficult to keep track of all the menus and to have a wholesome view of what I'm doing. So I would love to have everything in an app and then just transfer it to Kestrel. Less of course, wind values and directions and stuff like that.
Have you used the Kestrel Link Ballistics app?
Yes, I've not used it for the last 6 months or so, but it was very basic sort of an app at that point in time.
I don't see where you can change the functionality. It normally either pulls information or pushes information. It just does not give you functionality to change.
Yeah, essentially that's what it's doing. What do you mean by functionality change, I guess?
I think he means being able to change the menu system or the order of the menu. I think that's what I understood.
Yeah, no, I mean, I have to rephrase my question. Like, there are a lot of menus, and although Kestrel is quite user friendly, but I'm not able to keep track of everything in real time, what's happening. So if I have my app open and I can see, or I can pre-program things in it and then push it to the Kestrel for once. I mean, I don't know whether I can do that on the app or not.
Still trying to figure out what you're trying to do.
Okay, so I think I've rephrased my question and make it simple. I think making everybody's life miserable. So I want to have my rifle data, the muzzle velocity doing thing, and each and everything, including the temperature changes according to the propellant, and I need to have a full functionality in the app, and then need to push everything in the Kestrel so that I don't have to, jog around the menus that much.
So you want more, I see what you're saying. So you want to be able to push more stuff from the app to the Kestrel rather than doing it with the Kestrel.
Yes, that's what I'm talking about.
Okay, yeah, I'll take that as a note. But yeah, there's not right now. All you can do is send the profiles back and forth, and remote view the solutions with the app. But yeah, I know people have asked for like being able to change gun profiles with the app. I haven't heard, sending the temperature data or anything like that. But yeah, I mean that certainly could be something we add in the future. I'll take note of it.
Thank you.
Actually, there's one handy feature with inputting new targets that you can use app to make it more easy. For example, when you want to add some multiple targets, you can just create them in Link app and then push them to Kestrel. So it's a little bit easier.
Thank you.
Yeah, that is with the latest app. It's only out in Android right now, but yeah, you could build multiple sectors and push one sector at a time to the Kestrel. So I think that's a pretty nice feature for people who are going to a course. Someone could set up the whole course on their phone and then share their sectors with everybody that's going. So again, that won't be for iOS for another week or so. I think we're good.
When it comes to iOS, does that mean we'll have the sector capability on our phones as well as on the Kestrel? Is that what you're saying?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, the other two nice features we added in the gun profile menu, you could add notes, up to 200 notes, letters for notes, and then or words, I guess. And then you could add a picture. So you could take a picture of your profile and add it to the app, but it only lives in the app. It doesn't get pushed to the Kestrel at all.
Note of warning for the app and the sync with the Kestrel is that if you switch phones, you better push your targets to your Kestrel before you switch phones and then pull it.
And your gun profiles.
Exactly. Sorry, that's what I meant.
Yeah.
Sounds like experience talking.
Yeah, don't ask me why.
Yeah, I do also recommend if you have the time to get one of the cables and connect your Kestrel and pull it all into the PC. AB gun profile loader, that's another place you can back those gun profiles up, especially when you're shopping for a new phone.
You do need our USB cable on a Windows computer.
It works on Apple.
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. All right. Accuracy first. So I was just down there. We actually just filmed some videos. So those are going to be coming out soon. Accuracy first, for those of you that are unfamiliar with them, they are located in Texas. They do both civilian and military training. Their main focus from the start, when they started doing military training, is speed and accuracy. So engaging targets quickly and efficiently. Throughout all of their years of teaching classes, the Hodnets have come up with a couple different short formulas, little cheats, as you will, and they are very, very helpful to be using. It's a lot of data. So guys do an accuracy first class. It's a 1-week class. And it is intense. There is a lot of information that is poured down your throat all at once. Walking away from that and then going onto your other weapon systems, it's hard to remember everything. So this accuracy first page allows you to take all that data and apply it to every single one of your weapon systems. It is on every single Kestrel Elite and 5700X. You just have to unlock it to get to it. So first things we're going to do is go in and unlock it. If you hit the sprocket button from your home screen, it's going to take you into the menu. Scroll down till system is highlighted, center button into system, scroll down 2 times till accuracy first is highlighted, toggle to the right to change it from off to on, and then sprocket your way back up. Now, as you're scrolling down to find the accuracy first page, which is below target card, when you pass Enviro, if it is set to live, make sure you toggle it over to lock. Accuracy first will not open if Enviro is on live. And the other bad news, is that accuracy first is in mills only. It doesn't work in MOA. Right. So once you go into that accuracy first page, you're going to click on that button of accuracy first. It should open right away. If it doesn't, again, check your enviros. They're probably on live. And you're going to see all these different strange words with lines next to it. The formulas and algorithms that are used in the accuracy first page are pretty complicated. They pull a lot of data. And you typically need to update them once when you're out shooting, not constant. So we have them blanked out until you push an update to them. If we were allowing them to run in the background, your Kestrel would drag, and you wouldn't, if you had it turned off or hidden, you wouldn't even know why it was dragging. So we control that speed by having all of the formulas be something that you have to push to get. So in any one of these, when you click into them, there's a place that says go, and that's going to run the formula for the weapon system that you have set up right then and give you information. Now, we do a separate class with accuracy first for all 5 of the topics that are in accuracy first. We're not going to go into big detail because we're also short on time, as always. I am going to email out this PowerPoint. It has all the details of the accuracy first things, and you can review those. We do have videos up. We have some new videos coming out, so you'll have all of that. Now, going through, there's quick wind is engaging in shots really quickly where you don't have time to set up a full wind capture. So we did touch on that a little bit earlier. You have to calculate in wind values, right? And this will give you information about that. The second line down is your wind dots. Anybody that has a tremor reticle, whether it's one of the old series tremors, the new tremors, if you have a tremor reticle and you have all these little dots in here, these are your wind dots. You can use the Kestrel to now calculate what your wind dot is, what the value of your wind dot is. On this example, this is a 4 mile per hour wind dot. So tremor reticles are set up as holdover reticles. If you dial, your wind dots go away. They don't mean anything. But if you use them as a holdover, at 1 mil, if you have a 12 mile per hour wind, you're going to hold this third wind dot. If you have a 14 mile per hour wind dot, you would bracket between the 16 and the 12, right? Same with now you're shooting at 4 mils, you have a 14 mile per hour wind, you're going to put the target right in between these two right here and send it. So you're bracketing those winds. But these wind dots are a nice quick way for you to know. The tremor reticle is a phenomenal tool for quick engagement and using it for wind. It looks pretty overwhelming when you first look at it. Learning what your wind dot values are and using that out in the range can make a believer out of anybody. It's really good. Now, speed drop. Speed drop is the one that we will spend some more time on. Speed drop is also the one that we just had Colby do a pretty good video on that we should have published in the next month or so. Speed drop is the ability to get your elevation hold based on the distance that you're shooting. There's a backstory on how speed drop got invented, but basically Todd and Colby Hodnett were going back and forth talking holds, and they realized that between a certain range, the distance to their target was minus the exact same number, because they like math. I don't like math, but they like math, and their math brains figured that out really fast. So when you do a speed drop, what you're going to do is you're going to go into speed drop. The first thing you want to set up is your degree of error. So are you willing to have a plus or minus 0.1 or 0.2 mils as your accuracy? I recommend everybody do 0.2. That's what Accuracy First recommends as well. What it's going to do is give you a bigger range, and I'll get to that in a second. So you're going to set that error of 0.2 or 0.1, and then you sprocket back and you get into this main one. You're going to scroll down till you see calculate and hit the center enter button to start your calculation. It'll populate out some information, and in this example, it's telling us our speed drop number is 1.9 mils between 218 and 710 meters. So what that means is any distance between 218 and 710 meters, I divide it by 100, so I'm basically moving a decimal over 2. I subtract my speed drop number, and I now have my elevation hold. Now, I know that I mentioned to you guys how much I hate math. This is a lot of math. I don't like it. What Colby came up with to make me like this is you can dial your scope down. So you can dial down your speed drop number. Now, it doesn't work on every single scope because some scopes don't allow you to dial down, but you can dial down. So my scope, I can dial down 1.9 mils. So I go below my 1.9 mils. I'm still using it as a hold over reticle. And he says, hey, there's a target at 570. I'm going to hold 5.7 and send it. This one's at 420, 4.2 and send it. Oh, there we go. That's 610, 6.1 and send it. And it's that fast. Anything in that range of 218 meters to 710 meters, once you subtract out your speed drop number, your elevation is your hold. And we even took a real range card. We took shots of a range card. So this is a real range card off of a Kestrel. This is saying the distance. I made it down to 2 minus the 1.9. This doesn't work, but that's because it's below the minimum range. But right here, everything is right there. It is within the 1.1 mils or 0.2 mils.
This is great. Thank you.
Yeah, speed drop is awesome. It is a lot of fun. Just keep in mind that there is a max and a min distance on it. Colby also, when I was just down there, had another little trick for people that don't have, because I think I have Night Force scopes, so I know Night Force goes below 0. I know that my husband's scope is Leupold. He cannot go below 0. So I know that there's some scopes that you can't go below 0. You can make the math easier. So this is 1.9. I could dial up 0.1 mils, and then I just subtract 2 mils. You can dial up a little bit, and then you subtract more, but you make your math easier. So there is ways to kind of work around it. We have that in the video that's coming out. But if you have the chance to play around with speed drop, highly recommend it. It's a lot of fun. All right. It also, on the Accuracy First page, will have aerodynamic jump. So it's going to give you what your aerodynamic jump is. And then there is a 12-inch drill. I believe we have one video online. We don't do anything in the classes here for 12-inch drill, but you can always ask the Accuracy First guys about that. So we are really behind here. Range estimator. There is, I told you I would get you guys to a range estimator. So leaving Accuracy First now, we're moving back up to our target TGT. If you hit center button to go into TGT, you can scroll down to TR, target range, and center button into that. and you can see range estimate and center button to this. So this is just a way to help you mill targets, right? You're going to have to know what size your target is, whether it's a telephone pole. We had a guy in the class who's like, I knew every single kind of trash can, the sizes of trash cans, whatever it is that you're looking at, whatever you know, and the sizes that you know, if you can find them out there, then you can use this range estimator. You're going to put in what the size of that target is. You're then going to input how much of your reticle that's filling up, and it's going to calculate out what your distance is. So it's a nice quick way, but it does say that you have to know what size your target is. And finally, max point blank range. Joe, that is you.
All right, yeah, I'll try and go quickly through this because we're a little late. So max point blank range is a nice number for hunters usually. Basically, it's going to give you a hold within a certain range that if you hold it anywhere within that range, you're going to hit your vital zone. And the vital zone being, you know, typically the heart of an elk or something like that. So first thing we'll do is how to find it. First, we go main ballistic screen, go to gun, center button. This is going to be under 0 range, ZR, center button. And then you'll see something called max PBR, hit the center button. Now, the only thing you need to know is your target size or that vital zone. So at the very top, you'll see target, and a typical value is 8 inches. So I'm going to make it 8 inches, and then boom, all my numbers become populated below. Now, what are these numbers? Let's go to the next slide. So the first was the target, which is what you entered, the vital zone. And then your next one is going to be your max point blank hold. Now, this is your elevation hold that you're going to use for any shot inside of your max point blank range. So in my case here on my Kestrel, it's 0.9 mils. So I'm going to hold 0.9 mils. Now, where do I hold it? Anywhere from right next to the animal to my max PBR, the max point blank range. So this is the maximum range where you could dial this hold and hit that vital zone. So in my case, I have it at 254 yards. So if I know that animal is 250 yards or closer, I could hold my 0.9 and I'm going to hit that vital zone. Now, the no-go is going to be yeah, you just went a little too quick, but I appreciate it. The no-go is going to be when you're looking at the scope, it's going to give you a mil size or a MOA size. If that vital zone is smaller than what that no-go number is, then your target is past the max point blank range. So that's no-go, no shot, don't take it. So that's another way to tell without, you know, lazing what you're seeing. You can look in the target. Once that no-go gets bigger than what the no-go value is, then you're good. And then the far ZR is going to be where the exact 0.9 hold would hit dead center. So if you hold center, you hit center. So going back and looking on this illustration at the top, anywhere from the elk all the way out to the beginning of your shot, that's going to be your max point blank range. And then, you know, somewhere in the middle-ish is going to be your max point blank, your 0 range. So when I shoot from here, I'm going to hit dead center. If I shoot from the very, very far end of the max point blank range, I'm going to hit the very, very bottom of the vital zone. And then if I'm right next to the target, I'm holding 0.9, I'm basically going to hit the very top of the vital zone. So yeah, anywhere within this range, if you hold that 0.9, you're going to hit that vital zone. So it's a quick engagement for hunters and knowing they can make the shot ethically because they know they're within that range. Any questions? All right, right on 2:30. So yeah, that is the end. As Katie mentioned, she will be emailing this out and you'll get a promo code for 10% off. We'll include the video and the PowerPoint. I appreciate everyone who came and attended.
Katie, when's the win class?
Well, we already had 2 this year, so it's hard to get Emil to do a third. It's probably going to be the spring at this point, unfortunately.
Okay.
It is but listen, he does travel. He works for Capstone. So Capstone owns, Burger, Bullets, Lapua. He is a phenomenal speaker. If you ever see him listed at any event, or you ever see the ability to talk to him, to listen to him, I highly recommend Emil Praslik, that you guys check him out. He is also he always likes to point out, he is the only Emil Praslik in the world. So you can reach out to him and he will answer you questions. I do think that he is probably the best wind reader in the world. He was at AMU for many, many years. He worked with the Applied Ballistics team when they were doing King of the 2 Mile, and his calls are just magical. And he does a lot of it with a $2 calculator that he bought at Walmart. He likes to brag about that too. So, really great guy.
Katie, do you have a recording of a lecture, or is there any way you can share that for the
We don't have that recording anymore. The recordings, when we send them out to the people that are registered, the recordings expire soon after, so I don't have that available.
And speaking of which, there is a Vortex class next week, and those are rare. So if you guys want to be in the Vortex class, make sure you.
Yeah, the idea with the Vortex class, it is going to be mainly focused on the Fury, but I'm sure if you guys have all seen the chatter, Vortex did just recently come out with a weapons-mounted laser rangefinder, and I'm sure that Ruben will be happy to answer questions about that. It does have geoballistics in it. It's not applied ballistics, so the connection with the Kestrel is not quite as seamless, but it does have the ability to talk to the Kestrel. So if you want to sign up for it and ask Ruben some questions, I know that he would be happy to answer them. Yes. If anybody has any other questions, let us know. You can always do a reply all to the email that I sent out. That's going to go to just me and Joe. It won't go to everybody else in the class. And we will get back to you as soon as possible with any questions that you have. All right. Yeah, go ahead. Do you have a question?
There was one about AJ, when it should be switched on.
So I don't turn off AJ, but I know the easiest way to turn off AJ is just turn off Wind 1, put it 0 miles per hour. You can then get out of AB, or out of the accuracy first page, you can figure out what your AJ value is for wind, and you can apply that yourself. Again, math, don't like it. So I leave my AJ value on for the most part. Any other questions? All right, then. Thank you so much, guys. We really appreciate it. Appreciate seeing everybody.
Thank you.
Hopefully
Have a good
see you
day,
all
guys.
soon.